Few decades are as influential in pop culture as the 1980s. Some of the stars of that era peaked then and have since faded away, while others have remained popular in the decade since. Regardless, here's a peek at what your favorite stars of the 80s look like today. Bruce Willis first became popular on the ABC show Moonlighting, which he starred on alongside Sybil Shepherd from 1985 to 1989. He also found love in that decade with fellow actor Demi Moore, whom he met at the premiere of the movie Stakeout in 1987. They married later that same year. The following year, Willis became a megastar by starring in Die Hard, which has enjoyed a legacy as one of the greatest action films of all time.
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
The Die Hard franchise has lasted for decades, with Willis as Detective John McClane always in the lead. The actor also found success in other classics like Pulp Fiction and The Sixth Sense. In 2021, Willis turned 66 and celebrated his 12th wedding anniversary with his second wife, Emma Hemming. While he and Demi Moore have divorced, they've remained close and still spend time together with their 3 daughters, Rumor, Scout, and Tallulah. The 1979 sci-fi classic Alien made a star out of Sigourney Weaver, who would go on to reprise the role of Ripley in 3 sequels in the 80s and 90s. The first of those sequels, 1986's Aliens, even earned her a Best Actress nomination at the Oscars. Also in that decade, she delivered another iconic performance in the first 2 Ghostbuster films. And she also showcased her incredible acting skills in more dramatic fare like Working Girl and Gorillas in the Mist. Decades later, Aliens director James Cameron once again called up Weaver to help him, this time with his Avatar series. After that movie's massive success in 2009, Weaver signed on to reprise her role in Avatar 2 and other sequels to follow. Filming for Avatar 2 has included demanding underwater shots, which Weaver loved. Cameron, for one, knew that his actress could handle the physicality of filming. As he recalled to the New York Times, he remembered that while directing Aliens, she was running around this complicated set, and there were valves and handles sticking out, and she'd crack into them with her arm or shoulder or hip. I remember her just being black and blue after a couple of weeks. It's not hard to make a case for Molly Ringwald as the most iconic movie star of the 80s. She shined in the ensemble cast of The Breakfast Club and demonstrated her leading lady bona fides in 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink. As she recalled in a 2018 piece for The New Yorker, writer-director John Hughes planned to film The Breakfast Club in Chicago and to use local actors. As she noted, while looking at headshots of actors to consider for the movie, he found mine and decided to write another movie around the character he imagined that girl to be. That script became 16 Candles. She and Hughes worked well together, so he also wrote Pretty in Pink for Ringwald to be the lead. But by the early 90s, Ringwald felt limited in Hollywood. She turned down the lead parts in Pretty Woman and Ghost and relocated to Paris. While in France, she got married and acted in French films. But eventually, she divorced her first husband and moved back to the US to live in Manhattan, where she became a Broadway star, headlining a revival of Cabaret in 2001. She's since returned to film and also found success on TV with regular parts on The Secret Life of the American Teenager and Riverdale. In 1983, Matthew Broderick starred in the Cold War-era thriller War Games. That was a decent hit that earned a few Oscar nominations, but his most iconic role of the decade was a few years away, when he played the titular troublemaker in 1986's Ferris Bueller's Day Off, in which he skipped school to explore all that the city of Chicago has to offer.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Ferris Bueller director John Hughes reportedly wrote the entire script in just 1 week. As Broderick's co-star Alan Ruck revealed in a 2018 interview with the AV Club, the part of Ferris was actually originally offered to Anthony Michael Hall, while Ruck's role of Cameron had been offered to Emilio Estevez. But Hall turned it down because he'd already been in 4 John Hughes movies, and Estevez had another offer for the film Repo Man. Broderick has since gone on to become a mainstay on Broadway, including his iconic turn in the stage adaptation of Mel Brooks' The Producers. In the 90s, he met his future wife, Sarah Jessica Parker, thanks to 2 of her brothers. The couple eventually starred together on Broadway in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, and they now have 3 children together. In 2021, Broderick signed on for the rom-com She Came to Me, alongside Anne Hathaway and Marissa Tomei. As the bad boy in The Breakfast Club, Judd Nelson became one of the hottest young actors in the 80s. He also starred in St. Elmo's Fire alongside other famous young actors of the decade. In a 1985 New York Magazine article, writer David Blum coined the name Brat Pack to refer to the likes of Nelson, Rob Lowe, and Emilio Estevez. The three young actors appeared on the cover of the magazine, as Blum followed them around New York City in their prime. Nelson recognized his time in the spotlight could be fleeting, as he noted, "You can be hot and be a shamelessly poor actor. It's possible. Now, it's possible to be at the top for half a second and then disappear. It's such a strange thing to try to build a career on this heat." The article noted that Nelson enjoyed running around with his actor buddies in their free time, and as far as continuing to work together in film, he had this to say, "I think ensembles should continue forever." Nelson correctly predicted his fall from peak fame as he settled into less high-profile acting roles. His recent gigs have included a recurring role on Fox's music industry drama series, Empire. Janet Jackson hadn't originally planned to follow in the footsteps of her older siblings in the music industry. Instead, she reportedly wanted to be a horse racing jockey or an entertainment lawyer, but her father convinced her to pursue music. So in 1982, when she was 16 years old, she released her eponymous debut album. She followed that up a couple years later with Dream Street. But it was her third album, 1986's Control, that really rocketed her into superstardom. That release included such top 10 Billboard hits as Nasty, When I Think of You, and the title track. Jackson was a legitimate pop star in the late 80s, which set her up in 1989 to release her masterpiece, Rhythm Nation 1814. All 7 of the singles released from that album made it into the top 5 of Billboard's Hot 100, with 5 making it all the way to number 1. Thanks to this massive success, The Atlantic referred to her in a retrospective article as the most culturally significant female artist of the 1980s. Jackson's legacy holds up decades later, even to younger artists. For example, Lizzo called her the Queen of Pop on Twitter in 2021. And she's still out there performing, a living legend who has plenty to teach the new generation. You might not know the names Ramon and Carlos Estevez, as that father-son duo changed their names to Martin Sheen and Charlie Sheen, respectively. But Charlie's older brother, Emilio Estevez, stuck with his original moniker. As he reflected to The Guardian in 2020, "My decision was met with a lot of resistance at the time, but it was abundantly clear to me that my father had earned his name and I hadn't." And in a 2019 interview on the show Talk Stoop, Estevez reflected on the importance of a Spanish last name for a prominent celebrity.
And I can't tell you how many people on the street have stopped me on the street and said, you know, just seeing your name on a poster, just seeing your name on screen meant so much to me.
Estevez achieved fame in the 80s for his roles in The Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire, not to mention his membership in the Brat Pack. In his personal life, Estevez had 2 children with model Carrie Sally, and then dated his St. Elmo's Fire co-star Demi Moore. In the 90s, he married singer Paula Abdul, but they divorced after only 2 years. Then he started to run into financial troubles. As he admitted to People magazine in 2006, "I started to answer to a different god. I had a very expensive, now ex-wife, and got caught up with bigger is better. I went broke chasing that." To take care of his debts, he sold his home and autographed photos and also cashed in his pension. Luckily, Estevez has since recovered and recently popped up as a regular on the Disney Plus series The Mighty Ducks – Game Changers. Rob Lowe made his film debut in 1983's The Outsiders, and then it was off to the races. By the time he appeared in St. Elmo's Fire in 1985, he had the most beautiful face among the young men in Hollywood at the time, according to David Blum's New York Magazine article about the Brat Pack. As Blum noted, "The Brat Pack is to the 1980s what the Rat Pack was to the 1960s. A roving band of famous young stars on the prowl for parties, women, and a good time." At the time, Lowe was dating fellow actor Melissa Gilbert. They got engaged but ultimately broke it off. Later in his career, Lowe transitioned more into TV. 2 of his biggest roles were political parts in the dramas The West Wing and Brothers and Sisters. He's also showed off his funny side in the likes of Austin Powers and Parks and Recreation.
Pawnee is literally the greatest town in the country.
Throughout the years, Lowe has continued to impress fans with his seemingly ageless face. He partly credits his youthful look to his skincare and moisturizing routine. He's even created his own skincare line, called Profile. As a teenager, Anthony Michael Hall made a name for himself as one of the resident nerds in Hollywood. Like other stars of the 80s, he wisely linked up with John Hughes, who wrote the screenplay for 1983's National Lampoon's Vacation, in which Hall played Rusty Griswold. He went on to star in Hughes' first 3 films as a director: 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, and Weird Science. In 1985, he joined the cast of Saturday Night Live at the age of 17, making him the youngest cast member in the show's history. But that gig didn't really work out, as he was gone after just 1 season. Hall continued to act, but he also made headlines for his legal troubles, including allegedly shoving his next-door neighbor to the ground, which resulted in 3 years of probation in 2017. Then in 2020, TMZ released footage of Hall in a hotel pool yelling at other guests. But he's since continued to stick with acting. In 2021, he joined the cast of the film The Class, which was inspired by none other than The Breakfast Club.
I've always tipped my hat to John.
The 1982 teen comedy classic Fast Times at Ridgemont High featured a rad, surfer-type character named Jeff Spicoli. A young Sean Penn played the part in only his second feature film ever. In a 2021 interview with GQ, he revealed, "I was in my parents' garage. My agent tracked me down at their house and said that there was this movie and that I should get a hold of the book." So Penn read the book and decided that he could play the part of Spicoli, as he drew inspiration from someone he grew up with. He bombed the audition, but the casting director convinced the rest of the team to give Penn another chance. In the following years, he landed major roles in other 80s films like Bad Boys and The Falcon and the Snowman. In 1985, he married Madonna, and the following year they starred together in the disastrous flop, Shanghai Surprise. Penn has continued to remain famous, both for his acting and for his personal life, as he's been in high-profile relationships with the likes of Robin Wright and Charlize Theron. He's also won 2 Best Actor Oscars along the way, for 2003's Mystic River and 2008's Milk. He's also a noted political activist, and he's gotten into directing, including 2021's Flag Day, in which he starred alongside his daughter Dylan. In 1980, Kevin Bacon played a camp counselor in the slasher classic Friday the 13th. That movie spawned one of the most durable horror franchises of all time. But the role that really launched Bacon to stardom came when he played a teenager who just wanted to dance in 1984's Footloose. He was already in his early 20s while filming, so to better understand the mindset of a teen, he went undercover in a real high school for a day. As he recounted on an episode of Variety's Actors on Actors, "The only people that knew that I was an actor was the principal and maybe the guidance counselors. The teachers didn't know, the students didn't know." The real students made fun of Bacon for his hair and clothing, and he found the whole experience terrifying, but it ultimately worked out pretty well for him. Later in the 80s, he linked up with fellow actor Kiefer Sutherland, whom he married in 1988. They're still together, and they've had a couple of kids along the way. Bacon has continued to steadily act, and he's also had a side gig as a musician, as he and his siblings play together as the Bacon Brothers. His recent big screen credits include the true-life drama Patriots Day and the horror flick You Should Have Left. The quintessential 80s flicks Stand By Me and The Lost Boys both featured Kiefer Sutherland as the older bad boy type. In a 2021 interview with The Guardian, he recalled of the former, "This was the only audition where I did the reading and was hired right there in the room." Sutherland and director Rob Reiner both agreed that his character Ace needed to be the film's villain. As the actor put it, "He was a bully, and the only way to make the character work was if you hated him." In that same interview, Sutherland also fondly recalled a time that his late co-star River Phoenix asked him to teach him how to play the guitar. Later in his career, Sutherland transitioned into politically oriented action roles. He, of course, starred as Jack Bauer in the long-running Fox series 24, and followed that up by playing the American president in Designated Survivor. In 2021, Sutherland signed on to play a private espionage operative in a series for Paramount+. But looking back at the start of his career, the 80s were perhaps his favorite time. As he told The Guardian, "There was maybe a 3-year period where I felt like the luckiest person on the planet. I was cruising through and having a blast. There's never felt like another time like that." When Eddie Murphy joined the cast of Saturday Night Live in 1980, He was only 19 years old, making him the second youngest cast member in the show's history. During his 4 seasons on the sketch comedy series, he was a huge breakout star, as he made audiences laugh while playing such standout characters as Gumby, Buckwheat, and Mr. Robinson, and doing such memorable impressions as Stevie Wonder and James Brown. Murphy decided to leave the show in 1984, but he quickly returned as a host that same year. It also didn't take him very long to become a movie star. After his role in 1983's Trading Places alongside fellow SNL alum Dan Aykroyd, he then starred in Beverly Hills Cop the following year. He's also entertained his fans as a stand-up comedian. His specials, Delirious and Raw, are 2 of the most influential in stand-up comedy history. Murphy went on to star in other popular films like The Nutty Professor and Coming to America, though he's also had his share of critical flops, like the notorious Norbit, which came out soon after his Oscar-nominated performance in Dreamgirls. As for recent projects in 2021, he showed up in the Coming to America sequel that's pronounced the same, but has the number 2 in the middle of the title. Ali Sheedy's first big film role came alongside Matthew Broderick in 1983's War Games, whose plot about hacking and computer coding proved to be influential to future computer wizards, like Google co-founder Sergey Brin, who told Wired in 2000, "It was a key movie of a generation, especially for those of us who got into computing." Sheedy went on to star in The Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire, alongside other famous teen actors from the Brat Pack, but the original New York Magazine article that coined that term didn't mention her at all. Looking back at the omission, Sheedy told The Independent in 2020, "The ladies weren't there. The guys would hang out a bit, but we weren't hanging out as one big group. We weren't young actors running around town spending all our time together. I thought the connection to the Brat Pack was a little gossipy and undermining, and I didn't know that it was going to stick the way that it did. It was uncomfortable for quite a long time." Outside of her few big hits, Sheedy struggled in Hollywood. For example, despite starring in the hit 1986 flick Short Circuit, she claims that she wasn't offered a bigger salary to reprise her role in the 1988 sequel. This disparity continued, and as she explained to The Independent, as time went on, the white men's club in Hollywood became more and more uncomfortable. Sheedy has continued to act in less high-profile gigs over the years, including a cameo in 2016's X-Men Apocalypse. After graduating from high school in New Jersey, Tom Cruise moved to New York City to pursue acting. He soon landed a small part in the 1981 coming-of-age flick Endless Love, and then he really broke out in a big way as the leading man in 1983's Risky Business. But this was just the beginning for Cruise, who had an impressive run in the 80s with hits like Rain Man and Top Gun, the latter of which truly turned him into a superstar. Over the course of his career, he's been nominated for 3 Oscars, and his movies have earned over $10 billion combined in worldwide box office. A big part of this success was Cruise's transition into an action star, particularly in the Mission Impossible franchise. He has a reputation as an adrenaline junkie, often doing his own stunts, even as he approaches his 60s. He'll continue to show off his need for speed in the upcoming Top Gun sequel, Top Gun Maverick, which is due out in May 2022.
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
Canadian actor Michael J. Fox broke out big on the NBC sitcom Family Ties as he played eldest child Alex P. Keaton from 1982 to 1989. In the middle of that show's run, Fox landed the role of Marty McFly in the 1985 sci-fi adventure classic Back to the Future, which was the highest-grossing movie of the year. But it was hardly a guarantee that Back to the Future would be a hit, or that Fox would even be a part of it, as the first 6 weeks of filming featured Eric Stoltz playing Marty. But Fox ultimately proved to be a much better fit, and he reprised the role for Part 2 in 1989, as well as Part 3 the following year. In 2021, he posted a reunion photo on Instagram alongside his co-star Christopher Lloyd. In 1991, Fox was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He was only 29 at the time. That didn't stop his showbiz career, though, as he found small screen success again on the political sitcom Spin City beginning in 1996. He publicly revealed his condition in 1998, and by 2000, he founded the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. He's continued to act here and there, including a recurring role on The Good Wife and its spin-off, The Good Fight. And in 2020, he released a memoir called No Time Like the Future, An Optimist Considers Mortality. In Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Jennifer Grey played the title character's annoyed sister Jeannie. After the success of that film, she and her co-star Matthew Broderick took a vacation together in Northern Ireland. While there, Broderick was driving with Grey when the actors had a head-on collision with another car, tragically killing a mother and daughter in the other vehicle. Grey was unharmed, while Broderick had to be rushed to the hospital for face cuts and a broken leg. This was just weeks before Grey was set to do the publicity rounds for Dirty Dancing. That film went on to be a box office success, thanks to the delightful chemistry between Grey and the late Patrick Swayze. Grey has continued to act in the decades since, despite a change in her physical appearance. She underwent rhinoplasty surgeries in the early 90s, and as reported by People magazine, casting directors stopped calling her afterwards. As Grey once said, "I went in the operating room a celebrity and came out anonymous." From 2014 to 2017, Grey starred as the main character's mother on the 80s set Amazon dramedy Red Oaks. And in 2020, Deadline reported that she had signed on to reprise her role as Baby in an upcoming Dirty Dancing sequel. When he was only 3 years old, Corey Feldman made his acting debut in a 1976 McDonald's commercial, in which he plays a young boy who gives a 50-cent McDonald's coupon to Santa Claus. He went on to have quite the career as a child actor, as he started to appear in TV shows like Cheers. His first truly iconic role came in 1985's The Goonies, which he followed up with 1986's Stand By Me and 1987's The Lost Boys. But off-screen, Feldman started to experiment with drugs. It started with a little bit of pot, which led to cocaine and heroin, which then led to jail and then rehab. As a result, his finances were also a major struggle, as he confessed to the Phoenix New Times in 2000, "If I had known the damage that it would do to my career, then I probably wouldn't have made those choices." Feldman also tried to make it as a musician, as the lead singer for the band Corey Feldman's Truth Movement. And he's released solo albums, including Former Child Actor in 2002. He's also continued to act, but despite many career do-overs, he's never quite regained the fame he enjoyed in the 80s. Drew Barrymore comes from a long line of actors, and she was only 11 months old when she first appeared on screen in a dog food commercial. She then made her big screen debut at the age of 5 in the 1980 sci-fi horror film Altered States. But it was her role at the age of 7 in E.T. the Extraterrestrial that turned her into a child star. Directed by Steven Spielberg, E.T. became one of the highest-grossing films ever. Around that time, the young Barrymore reportedly asked her mother if Spielberg could become her godfather, which he agreed to do. In the same year that E.T. came out, Barrymore also became the youngest host ever of Saturday Night Live. Sadly, all that fame at an early age soon led to major problems. As Barrymore revealed in her memoir, Little Girl Lost, she had her first cigarette when she was only 9. And then within 3 years, she had her first beer and moved on to cocaine. Soon after, she went to rehab, all by the time she was 14. She ultimately recovered and continued a successful career in acting and producing. And in 2020, she landed the plum gig of hosting her very own daytime talk show.
Ma'am, I asked you a question!
If you or anyone you know is struggling with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP 4357.